The first time I felt my eyes become useless, I was staring at a bank report. It was late, my laptop was the only light in the room. The report was filled with familiar language, loss rates, attack vectors, customer friction, mitigation strategies. Then halfway down the page, I came across one number. By 2027, banks in the United States could be losing as much as $40 billion a year to AI enabled fraud. $40 billion. Not because one perfect fake video fools the entire country, and not because some supervillain breaks into a vault. The losses could come from something much more ordinary. A person receiving a call that sounds like their boss, a voice note that sounds like their spouse, or a video that looks enough like their child to make them stop asking questions. I kept reading, waiting for the reassuring paragraph, the one that would say the number was alarming, but that defenses were catching up. It never came. Instead, the report returned again and again to the same promise: better detection, more advanced models, and more reliable ways to distinguish the real from the fake. That promise bothered me. What happens when the thing we are trying to detect is learning faster than we are? I'm Carl Kim. This is Interconnected. This episode is not about whether you can spot a bad fake on your social media feed. It's about what happens when a voice, a face, or a video becomes part of the machinery that decides who gets access to money, identity, healthcare, work, or even their own account. When those signals become cheap to imitate, trust does not disappear. It becomes harder, slower, more invasive. And more of the burden falls on the person trying to prove they are real. So the question I want to consider is this: when our eyes and ears are no longer enough, how do we prove we are human? For a long time, I had a simple picture of deepfakes. They were spectacles, a politician saying something they never said, a celebrity pasted into a video, or a strange viral clip with dead eyes, rubbery hands, and just enough wrongness to make you suspicious. The defense in that picture was attention. Look closer, listen harder, do not be gullible. For a while, that may have been enough. But banking is not TikTok. A bank cannot pause every interaction, gather everyone around the screen, and ask, something looks unusual. It has to make decisions constantly. Can this person open an account? Should they be allowed to reset a password? Can they move money or pass voice verification on a customer service call? Does the face on the screen belong to the person holding the phone? Those decisions happen in seconds, sometimes milliseconds, with millions of customers moving through the system. There is no human being waiting behind every login. That is where I met Maria. Maria is a composite character built from conversations with fraud leaders, security teams, customer advocates, and people who have worked inside financial institutions. Her dialogue is dramatized, but the situations reflect real problems. Picture a fraud operations floor after dark. The overhead lights are low, monitors glow blue and white, and half-finished coffees sit across keyboards. Alerts accumulate faster than anyone can read them, while a printer produces another batch of flagged cases. Marie has worked in fraud for more than a decade. When she started, she believed in automation, not blindly, but deeply. She believed machines could identify patterns that people missed, the way someone typed, moved through an app, changed devices, or transferred money. A person examining one transaction might see nothing unusual. A model comparing thousands of surrounding signals might notice that something has changed. That promise became increasingly important as synthetic faces, cloned voices, and forged identity documents entered the financial system. Maria supported using face analysis, voice analysis, and video checks to answer one basic question: was there a real person on the other side of the screen? At first, the dashboards looked encouraging. Fraud alerts increased, suspicious applications were blocked, and leadership saw the numbers moving in the right direction. Then the complaints began. One morning, Maria's team reviewed the case of a retired customer trying to regain access to her account. She had an older phone, poor lighting, and a camera that softened and blurred her face whenever she moved. The app asked her to take a selfie, then asked for another. After that came a short video. Turn your head, blink, and try again. The system decided that her face might be synthetic and her account was locked. She was crying, Maria told me, not because she had done anything wrong, because she couldn't understand why her own bank didn't recognize her. The system had been designed to prevent impersonation. Instead, it treated a real customer as suspicious because her face was not sufficiently legible to the machine. A similar problem appeared in a different form with a college student who called customer service after a payment issue. The bank used the voice signals as one part of its fraud screening, but his call was noisy. His connection kept breaking up, and a cheap pair of earbuds clipped his speech. The system flagged the voice as suspicious. Nothing cinematic happened. His account was not drained, and no criminal gained access. He simply lost hours. He had to call back, answer additional questions, wait for another review, and explain repeatedly that he was himself. That is one side of the problem. A legitimate customer is forced to absorb the consequences of an uncertain system. The other side is more serious. A branch manager called Maria one afternoon about a man who had come in to finish opening an account. On paper, everything looked fine. His documents had passed remote verification, the face check had succeeded, and the application had moved through the system. Yet the branch employee felt that something was wrong. The man did not look obviously fake. He seemed almost too prepared. He knew exactly what to say, when to smile, and which details to offer before anyone asked for them. The bank reviewed the logs. What they found was not a flawless science fiction disguise. It was something more ordinary and more troubling. A collection of synthetic and stolen signals assembled well enough to satisfy the automated checks that had rejected the retired customer in her dim apartment. That was the moment Maria's confidence changed. The technology was not useless. The problem was that it was making decisions with consequences far greater than its certainty justified. It wasn't that the system failed all the time, she told me. It was that it failed in both directions. A legitimate person could be mistaken for a fraudster, while a convincing fraudster could be mistaken for a legitimate customer. Those errors are not equivalent. You can lock someone out of their own life. The other can let someone into it. Maria wanted more human review for cases in the gray zone. Not every transaction or every login, but the interactions where the risk was high and the automated signals were uncertain. She brought the proposal into a meeting with fraud, security, compliance, product, and customer experience teams. Everyone agreed that additional review might catch more problems. The disagreement was about what that review would cost. Would customers abandon an application if it took 5 extra minutes? How many transfers would fail if they had to wait? Would people move to another bank because the sign-up process felt difficult? The word that kept coming up was friction. Friction meant lower conversion, less engagement, and potentially less revenue. It was treated as a problem even when the added time might protect customers. Maria left the meeting with the same dilemma she had brought in. The bank needed to move quickly, but speed required machines to decide who was legitimate. The more responsibility those machines assumed, the more damaging their mistakes became. If Maria showed me what the problem looked like from inside the bank, I needed to understand the other side. Who was making these fakes? I had imagined a genius hacker working alone in a dark room, writing custom code and building one devastating deception at a time. People like that exist. but they are no longer the center of the story. The center is someone like Jay. Jay is also a composite character, drawn from reporting on scam operations, fraud investigations, victims' accounts, and conversations with people who study the ecosystem. Picture a cramped office in the middle of the night. Fluorescent light hangs overhead. Cheap rolling chairs scrape across the floor, and a desk fan turns uselessly in the corner. Rows of workers wear headsets and speak in low voices while a supervisor moves between them, checking call counts, payment targets, and results. It does not look like a hacker den. It looks like a business. Jay is not training a frontier AI model or writing sophisticated code. He is using tools developed by someone else, script prepared by someone else, and data acquired by someone else. His job is not invention, it is throughput. A voice can be generated or altered. A video can be staged. A profile can be made to look credible. The script can be adjusted to sound urgent, frightened, authoritative, romantic, or embarrassed. Then the operation tests what works. The attackers do not necessarily need direct access to a bank's private fraud model. They can learn from the system's responses. A rejected attempt reveals something. A verification failure provides information. A call that gets transferred instead of blocked tells them where the threshold may be. A fake that passes one system but fails another helps them map the boundaries. At scale, even small signals become useful. Jay's work is not about making one perfect fake. It's about producing enough plausible ones that some will succeed. That distinction matters. A fraud operation does not need to fool everyone. It needs to find people who are tired, rushed, isolated, grieving, distracted, unfamiliar with the technology, or simply caught at the wrong moment. The target does not receive a message announcing itself as an AI-generated scam. Instead, the message feels familiar. It may appear to come from a family member, a manager, or a customer service representative. Sometimes it's a voice note. Sometimes it is an urgent request that turns an ordinary bad day into an emergency. The underlying crimes are old. Impersonation, pressure, urgency, and isolation have always been part of fraud. What has changed is the production process. Synthetic media makes some forms of impersonation cheaper to attempt, easier to customize, and more convincing than the first few seconds. The moment when someone decides whether to hang up or keep listening. Jay told me the tools were almost boring. It's just software, he said. It looks like anything else. That may be the most unsettling part. We like to imagine dangerous things looking dangerous. We expect the threat to arrive with a hood, a server rack, or a distorted voice. But much of the modern fraud economy looks more like logistics: dashboards, scripts, payment targets, support channels, and performance metrics. A person working from a script does not need to be brilliant if the system around them has already divided the work into simple steps. That is how the scale changes. Maria's bank is trying to protect millions of interactions. Jay's operation can test thousands of variations. The bank cannot bring every customer into a branch, but the scammer needs only one person to answer the phone. It is tempting to describe this as a race between two forms of artificial intelligence. Defenders build better detectors. Attackers build better fakes. And each side adapts to the other. That race is real, but it's not the whole story. The system was vulnerable before synthetic media became this convincing. AI did not create the pressure to make trust instantaneous. It entered a world already organized around speed. Consider how much of modern life depends on receiving a fast yes. We open accounts in minutes, send money in seconds, reset passwords from the couch, approve purchases with our faces, and join video meetings without anyone verifying who is actually on the other side. Every extra step feels inconvenient because we've been trained to expect immediate access. Businesses have been trained to fear delay. A bank does not want a customer waiting 3 days to open an account. A payment app does not want someone reconsidering a transfer. A platform does not want users to stop uploading, buying, clicking, or posting. As a result, trust becomes automated. Instead of a banker who knows your voice and recognizes your face, there is an identity check. A receptionist is replaced by voice recognition or a security question. A person reviewing a document gives way to a system comparing pixels, metadata, account behavior, device history, and risk scores. Some of that automation is necessary. No human team could manually inspect billions of interactions. But the technology creates a quiet assumption that enough signals gathered quickly can substitute for a relationship. Synthetic media exposes the weakness in that assumption. A face is not an identity. A voice is not identity. A video is not identity. Each one is evidence, sometimes strong evidence, sometimes weak. But evidence can be copied, manipulated, rehearsed, stolen, or simulated. Three separate questions are being confused. Authenticity asks whether a piece of media has been manipulated. Identity asks whether the person shown or heard is who they claim to be. Authorization asks whether that person actually approved a particular action. Those questions are related, but they're not interchangeable. A perfect video of your boss does not necessarily mean your boss authorized a wire transfer. A real call from your parent does not prove that they are safe from coercion. A genuine face on a live camera does not establish that the account belongs to the person using it. Yet many digital systems collapse all three questions into one. Does this look real enough? If the question is yes, the action proceeds. That can happen too quickly for reflection, a second opinion, or a human being to say, something about this does not make sense. Maria saw this even in cases that did not involve deepfakes. A customer who had never sent more than a few $100s suddenly wired a large amount to a new recipient. An account was opened with a new device, a new location, and a new phone number at the same time. A frantic caller used the correct password and answered every question correctly, but the interaction still carried the unmistakable rhythm of coercion. The machines had enough signal to approve the activity. They did not necessarily have enough context to understand it. The problem then is not that machines should disappear. It is that they are being asked to make final judgments inside systems designed to avoid slowing down. The more useful question is not simply whether the fake can be detected. It is why one convincing signal is allowed to move so much money, change so much access, or cause so much damage. When photos and videos and voices become easier to manipulate, security systems look for something else. They want to know not only whether you resemble the account holder, but whether you are physically present at that moment. That is the promise behind liveness checks. You may have encountered one without giving it much thought. The app asks you to hold your phone at eye level, follow a moving dot, turn your head, blink, read numbers aloud, or move closer to the light. The purpose is not simply to collect a better selfie. It is to introduce unpredictability. A still image can be copied, and a recording can be replayed. A live response to an unexpected challenge is harder to fake in the moment. Harder does not mean impossible. It also does not mean equally difficult for everyone. Imagine someone sitting on the edge of a bed at 11:40 at night, trying to access an account before rent is due. The room is dark, the Wi-Fi keeps stuttering, and the camera cannot see their face clearly. They move toward a lamp, remove their glasses, and follow the instructions to blink. The app freezes. They try again. Now imagine a customer with a tremor, limited mobility, or a speech difference being asked to perform a sequence designed around assumptions about how everybody should move and sound. Or picture an older person holding a phone at an awkward angle, unable to understand why the bank suddenly needs proof that they are alive. The security team may see a reduced fraud rate. The customer experiences something else, a small, private humiliation, caused by a machine asking them to demonstrate that they qualify as a person. This is the shift taking place beneath the surface. For years, the promise of digital security was that institutions would protect us. Increasingly, the interaction becomes an instruction to prove ourselves to them. We are not only providing evidence, we are performing humanity. Liveness checks can be useful. They can block certain replay attacks and add an important layer of protection in high risk situations. The problem is not their existence. It is what happens when they become the default response to every uncertainty. At that point, the cost of fraud prevention moves downward onto the customer with the old phone, the unreliable connection, the unfamiliar interface, or the body that does not fit the system's expectations. Every additional safeguard also asks for more access to intimate information: the face, the voice, the movement, location, the device, patterns of behavior. As older signals become easier to forge, the replacements become more personal. Another proposed solution is provenance. If we can no longer examine a piece of media and reliably determine whether it is real, perhaps the media should carry a history. Where did it come from? Which device captured it? Was it edited? Was it signed? Has anything changed since its creation? In principle, this is sensible. A video can contain a cryptographic record of its origin. A photograph could indicate whether it passed through a trusted camera or editing process. A voice recording could carry information about where and how it was produced. The goal would not necessarily be to make fake media impossible. That may be unrealistic. Instead, it would make trustworthy media easier to identify in high-stakes situations. But provenance raises a difficult question. What happens to people who cannot safely attach a stable, traceable origin to what they say? Consider a whistleblower documenting wrongdoing, a dissident reporting abuse, or a survivor trying to send evidence without revealing their home identity or device. The same concern applies to an undocumented worker, a child, or anyone attempting to communicate while hiding from a person who controls their life. Provenance does not have to mean that every image is tied to a legal name. Systems can be designed around pseudonymity, selective disclosure, or limited verification. Even so, the pressure remains. If signed media becomes the gold standard, unsigned media may become easier to dismiss. It may appear less credible, less visible, or suspicious by default. Once institutions can distinguish between traceable and untraceable speech, there will be pressure to expand that capability. Platforms may use it to fight bots. Advertisers may use it to reduce fraud. Governments may want it for security, and law enforcement may seek it for investigations. The original purpose may be narrow. Maria kept returning to another question: who can actually survive in this new trust system? A person with a new phone, stable internet, updated software, secure storage, spare time, and strong digital skills may barely notice the changes. They pass the checks, manage their passwords, recognize phishing attempts, and know how to call back using a verified number. They can absorb the inconvenience. Someone else may experience the same system as a wall, a maze of prompts, a repeated failure to verify, a locked account, or a transfer that cannot be reversed. A support line may simply route the customer back to the automated check that rejected them in the first place. Safety can become a premium feature, not because anyone deliberately designed it that way, but because every safeguard assumes resources. It assumes time, reliable technology, confidence, a backup device, and someone available to help. The people most aggressively targeted by fraud are often the people with the least access to those resources. That does not mean they are foolish. Isolation is a vulnerability. So are confusion and urgency. Any system that asks people to defend themselves perfectly will fail the people who are already carrying the most weight. I began this investigation with a question about deepfakes. Can we still tell what is real? That question turned out to be too small. The deeper issue is what happens when institutions use faces, voices, videos, and documents as shortcuts for trust, and those shortcuts stop being reliable. The answer cannot simply be that we should look harder. It cannot be solved by installing a better detector. And it cannot mean forcing every person to prove again and again that they are alive, present, traceable, and worthy of access. There will be situations where stronger verification makes sense. The movement of money, access to medical records, legal documents, account recovery, and other high-stakes decisions deserve care. But care is not the same as friction for its own sake. Security is not the same as asking everyone to surrender more of themselves to a machine. The next time your phone asks to see your face, the interaction may feel insignificant. A glance, a blink, a turn of the head. Beneath it, however, is a much larger negotiation. The system is asking, are you who you say you are? Are you here right now? Can you prove it in a way I recognize? And if you cannot, because the light is wrong, the connection is weak, your device is old, your voice does not fit the model, or you simply do not understand what the system wants, what happens next? That is the question. The issue is no longer whether machines can learn to imitate us. They already can. The issue is whether we can build a digital world in which being human is not something we have to constantly perform in order to be believed. Every time we unlock a device with our face, answer a call from an unfamiliar number, or receive a message that feels almost painfully familiar, we are standing in front of a one-way mirror. Something on the other side is deciding whether to believe that we exist. I'm Carl Kim. This is Interconnected.